my gosh, everything I've built, my whole career, my YouTube stuff may go away in 6 months. How to get into consulting? I'll tell them, here's how I did it. Here's how I've heard other people do it. You're young and you want to still help people. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. That's why we're here.
Hey, Alex, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate you showing up. So we're going to get right into it. First, if you want to just give a little introduction about yourself, just in case anybody doesn't know you, which would be surprising.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name is Alex Freberg, better known as Alex the Analyst on YouTube. I've been doing YouTube content for over 5 years now, mostly posting about data analytics, about SQL, Python, Excel, lots of tutorials, and uh, how to become a data analyst. I've been working as a data analyst for about 8 years. Back in 2017 is when I got my start, and I've just been working in the data space ever since, either in a, company setting or doing my own business where I'm doing consulting or running an ed tech startup.
All right, very cool. Well, let's get right into it. So I'm really curious actually about before you got into the data space because you haven't talked about really much of that at all in your videos. And so I'm kind of curious, like what initially, before you were into data, I think you said that you wanted to become a doctor, yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you want to become a doctor, well before that whole data journey?
Um, I, like many people, I grew up watching House or, Grey's Anatomy or different shows, and I was like, that looks awesome. And I was also a pretty smart student, so I did very well in school. And I got into a few pre-med programs. And so I was like really gung-ho about becoming a doctor. So I did my whole first year of undergrad as pre-med on their pre-med track. And then I took an internship over the summer and I got hands-on experience being a doctor. And I was like, this is not what I want to do with my life. This is really, um, it was a lot more hurt and pain and death than I was anticipating. And I was young. I was like 18 at the time when I started doing that stuff. And I was like, I know myself well enough to know I don't want to do this for the next 50 years. And so for whatever reason, I then switched into nursing, which I thought was going to be different. It is basically the same thing. And I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And so I started um, looking around, seeing what kind of majors fit what I was trying to do. And I found, give me 1 second. My friend was just calling me.
No problem.
And when I started looking at all these things, I was like, I want to do something that doesn't involve blood. I want to still help people in the healthcare area. And so I eventually found physical therapy, and I was like, I want to become a physical therapist. This sounds right up my alley. I like the science side of things. It's a lot of it's not as much math, but it still is quite a bit of math with the physics and biology and stuff like that. And I can still help people. Well, in my college, at least, they had a track where you could be a recreational therapist, which was kind of a precursor to getting into the physical therapy or occupational therapy master's degree. So I joined the recreational therapy team, major, which I never heard of before. Did that, graduated as a recreational therapist, did my internship, did all that stuff. I had already gotten into a master's program back home. And so I was going to go back and live with my parents and do my master's program. And then I met my wife and I like changed every plan I had with my life. And I was like, I'm not going back. Um, and so, here I am.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, love changes the trajectory of life. That's definitely true. And I
Very
kind
much
of
so.
share that with you. Like, I was in the military and whatever. But the thing about like seeing blood and all that stuff, like I have a really weak, I don't know, mind or heart for that too. I don't know why.
Mhm.
So I get that. Um, but it's kind of interesting that you went from healthcare to data. Like
Yeah.
I feel like you never hear about that, quite frankly. And speaking of that, like, how do you feel about working with healthcare data specifically? I know recently you made some videos about it actually, but I've done a few jobs with healthcare data, like, and they have very unique data sets. And I feel like, and the laws, right, with like HIPAA and whatever. Um, so how do you feel about working with that? Because I found it a little bit too much, too cumbersome for my taste. I guess.
Yeah, it's really complex. I just did a healthcare series on my channel for the first time after like 5 years. I should have done it years ago, but it is really tough. And the people who I think do the best in it are people who already worked in healthcare. And so I came from a healthcare background. I worked in hospitals and done internships and all sorts of stuff. And so my background in knowing how to use EHR systems and understanding how the data gets put into these systems really came in handy. And so the transition was actually quite good because when I got in there, they were like, well, this EHR system. I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. And so that actually really, my background in trying to get into healthcare for many years ended up being really, really useful.
Okay, fair enough. And then I guess like from your standpoint of just general enjoyment, how would you compare being a recreational therapist versus being like a data analyst?
they're, they're completely different, right? When I was in recreational therapy, I was working at a behavioral health hospital. We had an adult unit and a kids unit, and really, what my job was to kind of play games, but in a therapeutic way with either the adults or the patients. So I would create games that would either help with their memory or, maybe they're having a lot of anxiety, and we would do something to help them understand it, and we would always bring it back to some type of therapeutic modality. And I just really enjoy helping people. I like that's just something I've always enjoyed doing, and that's why I wanted to go into that area. And so, I got a lot more sense of personal connection and helping someone who I know was hurting um, within recreational therapy. Within the data side, I really get a lot of enjoyment out of, you know, working with all these technologies, problem solving. It's just completely different. And so I guess I'm just a person who I can kind of enjoy what I'm doing if I can find enjoyment in what I'm doing. And so data was not something that I initially was like, whoa, I'm addicted to data. Now after a while I did where I deep dove way too deep, but you know, I come mostly from like a helper background. Like that's my parents are teachers and daycare workers, and that's kind of my background from my family.
Okay. And I'm curious, like, if you maybe remember one game that you would play or whatever, maybe not play is the right word, but one game from your
Oh yeah,
previous.
it's definitely playing.
Ah,
It
okay.
is like a game. It really is. I remember, I mean, I have all of them are stored up here,
Yeah.
but there was one time specifically we went to an assisted living. That was a contract that we did for several months. It was like a 3 month contract, and we came in, and so for these 3 months we'd create games for them. And so
Mm.
these are a lot of elderly patients, a lot of issues with memory and different stuff. And so have you ever played that game called Guess Who?
I mean, I think I get the concept, I'm assuming, but I don't know if I played it.
It's basically pictures of people, and you're trying to guess what the
Mm.
other person is. So you're like, does your person have glasses? Does your person have hair? Does your
Mm.
person have brown skin? And then you try to narrow it down to a one specific person that you can guess.
Mm.
Well, we did that, but with the assisted living staff. So then we took pictures of all the staff and put it in there, and they had to solve for who the staff was, and it helps with their memory. It helps with them thinking about, what does this person look like? What does this person sound like? What characteristics can I do? And so it's a lot of recall and memory, and we played that with them a lot because they really loved it. And
Mm.
sometimes we'd switch it up and we put like a dog in there or something like that, and they really it's fun, but it also was really helpful.
That's yeah, I mean that sounds pretty fun. I mean, obviously being in that area or whatever you would call it, it's not usually the most fun. I did a couple small things when I was in the military in these sorts of places, whatever you call them. You said the word. It's been a while, but yeah. So
Assisted
it's a
living.
pretty tough environment. Yeah, exactly. Assisted living. Yeah, tough environment, but that actually sounds kind of fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of that setting, maybe you worked in other settings. I don't know if you've only worked with elderly, but I'm just kind of curious from like a philosophical standpoint, how you feel about the effectiveness. Because I think you said you also did group therapy, if I remember correctly. Yeah. What do you think about the effectiveness? Because, you're a YouTuber, or maybe that's, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't call each other YouTubers, but you're a YouTuber. I don't know if you've seen like there's other famous YouTubers that, they have like a million subscribers nowadays, making a lot of like psychotherapy sort of videos. You probably know who I'm talking about. So what do you think about the effectiveness of like therapy, group therapy? I don't know if you have a strong opinion or any opinion about that. And what do you think about that, I guess?
Well, my wife's a therapist. She still does therapy. That's how we met, was we were both were in a similar field. But it can be completely life-changing. It really
Mm,
depends on the person, depends on, the type of diagnosis, background, trauma. There's a lot, it's very complex.
mm,
But for a lot of people, it can be very, very helpful. I think individual tends to be better because people can be more open and kind of walk through a lot of the trauma that most people had when they were a child. When you're in counseling, most things come back to when I was a kid. This is how my parents were. This is what happened. Um, that's what tends to be the case for most people. But group therapies can have it play a different role as well because group therapies you get to hear other people's things. You get to see how other people handled it, how other people were able to overcome or what they're working through. And it helps you kind of get a different perspective on your issues or your life or what you grew up with. And so they all play a different role. But I did therapy back when I actually was a patient back when I was in
mm.
like, college. And, there's no shame in it. It's really a very helpful, freeing thing if you do it and you have a good mindset to it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. There's another like well-known data professional that he talks about mental health as well. I don't know, you might know who I'm talking about. I don't want to name drop necessarily, but it's kind of interesting.
Oh, I
Maybe
know Zach.
okay, yeah. Yeah, like it's kind of interesting. Do we all have mental illness in software engineering? That's a joke. But so last thing about working in, I guess, the healthcare space versus working in data, I'm curious, from the standpoint of coworkers, management, did you have like, I'm sure you had bad experiences in both, but I guess like maybe if you can recall like one of the worst experiences that you had. I'm kind of curious in the healthcare space, but I'm also curious in the data space, if you can think of them.
Healthcare space is very different, managerial wise, just because very different backgrounds, very, very different backgrounds. Um, I don't know if I necessarily had a terrible experience, but there are managers who had been in there for 30, 40 years and they're like, they kind of become callous to it. They're just like,
Hmm.
oh, that person is, they're just like, it is what it is.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but let's try to help them.
Mm.
And they're like, oh, well, you're young and you want to still help people. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point. That's why we're here. So that that kind of always rubbed me the wrong way, as people who
Mm.
just kind of become numb to people's genuine problems. Um, in the data world, I I would say there was one manager that I had very briefly, but was very much of the mindset of it's kind of work until I go home. Like the boss, if you leave before the boss, then that's not a good thing. That's like a slight to like your job or whatever. And I didn't
Mm.
really vibe with that because I was like, my work's done. I'm going. And as I got more into my career, I became a lot more emboldened. I'm like, I know what I'm worth. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm getting paid for. So, treat me like an adult. And I very much pushed back on that. And I was like, look, listen, I'm not staying extra. If you want to reprimand me, you can. I was like, I have a family to go home to. Like, I'll see you tomorrow. I was taken off their team quite quickly because I asked for it to be taken off their team. I was like, I don't vibe with this person. That's not my work ethic. I don't do work that way. And so, that was kind of my worst experience. But again, it was very short lived because I tend to kind of speak up for myself pretty quickly. I know what I want, I know what I value. And if I get a boss that doesn't, I tell them. Like it wasn't a secret. I told him in a one-on-one meeting. I told him in front of people. Like it just, I wasn't being subordinate. I was just sticking to my boundaries. And so that was probably my worst experience, but it wasn't even horrible. He was still a nice guy.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? Like I've seen some videos on cultures in like East Asian countries and like Japanese, they have this culture of exactly what you described of like,
Yeah.
if the boss wants you to stay, you stay. If the boss wants you to party and drink, I think in Korea soju, but I'm not sure what they drink in Japan, then you have to drink. So yeah, I wouldn't like that either, to be honest. Work's done, hey. Have a good one. I mean,
Yep,
unless I'm getting
exactly.
overtime, obviously, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I think you said you used to live in China for a brief period, right? Did I get
I
that
didn't
right?
live in China, but
Ah,
I went to China several times, mostly in the Hong Kong, Guangdong, Guangzhou area. So
mm,
right inland of Hong Kong.
hmm
But I went there a few times, and I had fantastic, amazing experiences there. My wife lived in Singapore for several years when she was young,
Ooh,
and so now that we have our kids, we do plan on getting out into the Asia area, maybe when our youngest is maybe like 2 years ish, because
hmm
those are long flights.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but we do plan on getting back out there because we both have
Mm,
a very deep love for that culture.
yeah. Were you there when you were like adult, or were you like younger, or when you were out there?
The first time I went to Hong Kong, I was 14, and the last time I
Ah,
think I
okay.
was 17. But I went
Ah,
several
okay.
times in that time
Okay.
because we had foreign exchange students who were from China, and we became really good friends. And so they invited me back, and I went and visited two separate people. Both lived in the same area, but
hmm
um, I went and visited them several times.
Ah, that's pretty cool. Well, you might have been a little bit too young to see that work culture thing that you were just talking about you experienced in America over there, but nevertheless,
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, you know about it, I'm sure. Yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Um, so shifting gears, maybe a little bit more career focus. So, it seems like you take a lot of stock in working with recruiters
Yeah.
when people are job searching. Okay, it sounds like you're totally 100%. You still agree with that. Okay. I've never, I mean, not that I never, but it's been pretty rare. Usually, when I worked with a recruiter, it was like I applied for something on Indeed anyway, and then it was like actually a recruiter from one of those big companies. So I guess
Yeah.
what's your perspective now, 2025 and beyond, how you would approach an outreach for not really myself, but someone that's new, maybe someone in your audience that wants their first or second data role. Would you still say contact recruiters is like the number one method or something else?
It still is my number one method, but there are then other options, especially as you get jobs.
hmm
You know, I think especially now in the age of AI, when anybody can create a program or use some type of software to apply to 1,000 jobs, or create different versions of resumes or whatever, a lot of companies are starting to rely on their people a lot more. So they're really relying on them to vet them out well, instead of using these AI systems as much. And that's not my experience because I don't hire a lot for my
hmm
team. I have a team that hires for my team.
hmm
But I work with a lot of consulting clients as well as back when I was a hiring manager. And they will tell you, like, it is really difficult to get good talent. And so when you're working with these recruiters, oftentimes they're going to have several clients that they have in mind for if you have for certain experiences. So if you're a data analyst, they're like, okay, we have three open roles at three different companies. This guy seems really good. So back when I was searching, I remember, I after my very first job as a data analyst, I had 1 year experience. They're like, okay, you have a year. I know these three, jobs that are a good fit for you. And because I had a pretty good personality, I, was pretty good technically, they wanted me to get those jobs because they want to fill those roles with people they think will stay there a long time, will be a really good fit. And so if you have good experience, recruiters are fantastic. They are harder to work with when you have zero experience, because it's harder to show them that you have what it takes to get a job at one of those companies. But outside of recruiters, I really do rely on networking a lot. I see the value in it a lot more as my career has gone on. Early on, I didn't know anybody. I didn't really know the space. I didn't know how networking even worked. But now, take away my YouTube stuff and the people I've met through that, purely just from previous jobs, I know right now I could reach out to about 6 or 7 people who are working at large companies, and I could probably get interviews at least, or if not land a job pretty quickly from one of those people. They work at banks, they work at big tech companies, and these are people that I just met from working over the years.
hmm
Um, that's the type of networking that really is undervalued, I think. I think most people think, oh, if I'm looking for a new job, I just got to grit it out and do it myself. Um, I think that if you make good connections over the years, you should utilize them and you should reach out to them because people want to help other people that they like.
And so you think the best way to do networking is essentially like contacts from your previous jobs, or do you have something else in mind that's better?
So it doesn't have to be previous jobs. That was my experience. Like
Hmm.
previous people that I worked with, I know I could reach out to them. They would be more than happy to help. But if
Hmm.
you're just starting out, you can make a lot of connections online. In fact, I've helped, I mean, the number has to be over 100 at least. People that I've never met in like one-on-one, but people who I met in on Discord, on like, yeah, I have a Discord or, through LinkedIn who they messaged me and we talked for a long time. They asked questions. I was like, this person seems like a great person and they are looking for a job. When I hear about jobs, because I have a lot of people reach out to me saying, hey, I'm trying to hire, can't find anybody good. I kind of clicks in my head. I'm like, wait, I remember this one person who has experience in finance or healthcare or whatever it is. So then I'll just kind of pass them along. I would say when that happens, because it's almost a referral from me. It's like Alex is saying this person's a good person or a good hire. I would say the hire rate is probably like 50% ish, maybe a little lower. Depends on the type of job or who's
Hmm.
asking. But those type of connections happen all the time. And they may not have met me, but we've talked online and, they've interacted with me in some way. And so I get to know them either through email or, like I said, social media or something like that. So you don't have to, doesn't have to be previous experience. It can just be a connection you made online.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess join that Discord would be maybe not the number
It's
one
a
way.
good one. It's a
Yeah,
good one.
cool. And then I guess you mentioned in passing one time that it took you like 4 months to do your career change, which
Yeah.
I think most people would be surprised if they heard that, quite frankly. So but how long do you think it should take for new joiners today?
Yeah, I think my transition was quite fast for a few reasons. One is I was just like, I became obsessed. I literally was like every single night for at least 3 or 4 hours, I was taking courses and I was studying YouTubers and looking up strategies to apply and all these different things. So I don't know if that's just my personality, but I was like, I am obsessed with this. I feel like I need to do this. So yeah, 4 months is pretty fast. I think a very reasonable time frame for most people who are working like a full-time job or who are working a part-time job. If you have a few hours a day, you can do it in about 6 months. You can be job ready within about, you know, 4 to 6 months and then start applying.
Hmm.
Um, I've had people who I've worked with or who I've mentored or who have, taken my courses or I've worked with through LinkedIn or whatever who it takes 3 months, 4 months. And they're like, they just had a certain degree or background that really fit for a company and they just nailed it.
Hmm.
Where I've had other people, it took like a year, year and a half. And so in general, it tends to take about 6 to 8 months is what I've seen. And I've seen a lot of people. That's kind of the general, like from getting going, learning all the skills, creating a good resume, creating a good portfolio, and then applying and working with recruiters and applying to jobs. Most people who I would deem as like pretty committed, they're not just lackadaisically doing it, they're like pretty committed to it. Takes them about 6 to 8 months. But I always say I'm like, I would rather work really hard for 6 to 8 months or even a year to then change the rest of my future career instead of being stuck in like a job you don't like. I'm like the effort is worth it. You just have to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. It took me basically for maybe 5 months myself. I was like driving Uber at the time, so totally dead end career to
Yeah.
obviously something way better. Um, and I guess when it comes to large and small companies, do you have a preference for which one you personally like to work with? Maybe no preference at all. Maybe it's changed over the years even.
Yeah, it has definitely changed. So when I was first starting out, I started out a small company, but I wanted to work at a big company because they make more money and it's more prestige. And so pretty early on, I was like, I want to try to work at a bigger company. I never had my sights set on like big tech companies. I wanted to work in the healthcare because I was like, that's what I have the most knowledge in. So I ended up working for a company called Amerisource Bergen. I worked there for 3, 4 years. And they were one of the biggest healthcare companies in the world. and they're awesome. I really enjoyed working with them. But the difference of working is it's completely different. Um, at a large company, I had a very specific role. I was on a data collection team with underneath a data science umbrella for pharmacy, specialty pharmacy solutions. Very niche,
Mm.
very specific. We were working with just hematology and oncology data, so blood and cancer data.
Okay.
And so the niche was like really small, right? Uh, uh, which I then have a great expertise in that area. I know that data very well. But you don't get exposure to a ton of stuff. At a small company, I was working with everything. I was working with hospitals. I was working with different EHR systems. I was working with everything, and not just doing data collection. I was doing data visualization and client work and all these different things. Um, so I personally like working at smaller companies. I get to wear more hats. I get to do more things. There's more flexibility around the type of work that I get to do. Bigger companies are great, but you tend to niche down a lot and you're stuck in a very specific peg within the machine. And so that's just my personal preference. Now what I do is I do consulting, so I get to choose who I work with, and I have some clients on retainers that I really enjoy and like. And when they call me up and they're like, "Hey, we need some stuff done," I'm like, "This is great because I like this kind of work. I know it. I know I'll do a good job." And so it's it's very it 100% depends on the person though. Everybody's different. Some people like the big company with more pay and more prestige. Some people like just the work itself. And I think I've come that point in my career where now I'm back to like I just care about the work itself. It's not as much about like if I make 10 extra thousand and here or there.
Right on. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess you have like some super niched ICP, like in marketing terms, your customer profile that you're looking for. I would assume for consulting nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I started consulting about 3 years ago. 2 years into it was all by happenstance. I didn't try to do it. I just
Mm,
started my YouTube channel, started to grow. Right around like 125,000 subscribers or so, people just started reaching out saying, "Hey, I saw your video on SQL, or I saw your video on X, Y, or Z." And they're like, "We have this exact problem, but we can't figure it out. Would you help us?" And so then I just started like taking these one-off jobs, and I would charge so little. I was charging like $50,
uh,
$150, and I was like,
right.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is a small problem. I could fix that in an hour. So I was like, how much should I charge an hour? And so I was charging like $50, which was more than I was making per hour at my full-time job. As it went on, of course, my pricing structure changed, my clientele
Right.
changed, and now I take on more. Now I really can take on any project I want. I got a new one this morning. I get maybe 1 to 2 a day that reach
Hmm.
out. I say no to 99% of them because a lot of them I'm not interested in. Most of them are like just random things. I'm like, that doesn't interest me in the slightest. And I don't even know if I do a good job. Um, and so, that is kind of the flexibility and the great thing about what I do now is I just get to choose what I want to do.
Hmm.
And that's the ultimate flexibility. That's like small company on steroids. I get to do everything and anything and everything in between.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the best personally, from my perspective as well. But I think probably I would agree with you. Starting off like a small company is better. You can get the foot in easier. You get way more experience wearing way more hats. So I
Mhm.
kind of agree with you with that. Um, so the dreaded question of AI, gotta ask it, right? Because it's the current year. So how do you feel about the changing dynamics of the job market for new joiners? And the future. It seems like you're not the most optimistic person from uh, like, will this job even exist in a few years? Which I was surprised about because you seemed like super optimistic. And then in the AI video, you were like, yeah, I might not have a job, guys. So what do you think?
I would say that was more satire than it was my
Ah,
genuine take.
okay.
I don't know if you know Ken G. He's another YouTuber.
Hmm.
He helped me out early on in my YouTube journey I interviewed him, he interviewed me. It was awesome. Um, but Ken and I got on a call, and I think we put it online, but he was basically on the side of, I think AI is taking our jobs. He's like, I think we're like 10 years away, no jobs. I'm actually on the other side of things. I actually think it's going to create more jobs. Um, my a lot of this doesn't come from just me. A lot of my view comes from a lot of people I've talked to in the space who are probably even more knowledgeable than I am, who are, chief data officers at companies, who are, data analyst managers at, big tech companies and small startups. Like I get a pretty wide range of people. And here's the general take that I've seen,
Hmm.
which is the data that we are working with in today, like that everybody works with around the world, is crazy complex. It is very, very difficult to work with. And what happens is people think that AI will just come in, hook into your system, and then be able to make sense of all of it. Um, and the reality is that when you do that, and a lot of these people have tried to do that exact thing, is that it is so incredibly difficult, even with everything we have today, for AI to make sense of it and to actually give good insight and to actually clean the data and transform the data and get it from one place. It's like, it's not, it is not a just plug and it can do anything. It's not a black box. And so, as especially today, as more companies, as more teams are using AI, we are seeing the limitations on full display. And I myself use AI quite a bit, and I have a lot of consulting clients who have tried to implement and use AI. And there are things it's super great at, but it is, I don't see it happening very quickly where it's going to actually full on replace people. Although larger companies might say that, I don't think that's actually what's happening. It's more of a scapegoat, in my opinion. I see it what's going to happen is more companies who've never used AI, never used data, are going to get into AI and data because they see how important it is for their competitors. They're going to create AI and data teams. And those AI and data teams are not going to be a one-person team. It's going to start out as a one-person team because they don't want to invest highly into it, but it'll turn into a 3, 5, 10-person team for these medium and small companies. And so we're going to see a lot of job creation, I think, uh, quite quickly over the next 5 to 10 years, where if you have a specialty, if you have a domain knowledge and some technical skills, doesn't have to be crazy advanced, but you can utilize that with AI. You're going to be able to work at a lot of these companies that are hiring in these niches, right? If you have experience in construction or transportation or education or agriculture, all these different domains, AI will really enable you to get into the data space easier, but you're going to have to specialize in those domains even more. And so that has been my takeaway, I guess you could say, from a lot of these, what I would consider much more intelligent people than I am, who have more boots to the ground experience, is that's what they're saying. They're like, if it continues this way, we're going to need to hire on an extra person for this, hire an extra person for this, but it'll be worth it because we'll be able to do everything we want uh, using AI with it. But I haven't really, I mean, there was only one person out of maybe 30 or 35 people that I've talked to that were like, yeah, I could see us reducing our team size with AI. But that was like one person out of about 30, I would say. Everyone else was like, no, we've tried it. It's not doing 100% of what we're hoping or expecting. And I think in the future we'll need more. So that's my general takeaway. That's my general thoughts on AI at the moment. Subject to change as new technologies come out.
Fair enough. Yeah. That's pretty interesting that you've talked to, I would assume, like business owners or CEOs that have said they've already tried and tested it
Yeah.
themselves to replace essentially data or like replace the data analyst, and it hasn't worked. I don't know. You
Well,
maybe.
I don't think they were doing it to replace them.
Mm,
They were just like, hey, we know AI is awesome. We've heard so many amazing things. Let's try to implement it in our system. And not just like, hey, we bought a subscription to OpenAI. It's like, no, we're building out, we're trying the latest agents, we're trying, integrating into our databases, we're trying all these different things. And it's great. Like some of these things are really good, but here's the limitations. And from a business perspective, we can't, there's no way we would replace anybody. Like this
yeah.
is does not have replacement power. It just has enhancement power for the data we're already doing. Um, and so that I definitely don't think almost anybody was, maybe a few, but most people were not doing it to replace or downsize to replace with AI. They were just trying to see, hey, how can we use it? And then once they started using it, uh, there was a lot of
Disappointed.
more limitations and issues than they initially expected, which is
Yeah.
every technology ever.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I find like obviously from the perspective of a data professional, things that it quite frankly can't really do today at least is integrate between systems, clean data that needs to be cleansed, and have the business knowledge of something only a human would have essentially. It can't like gather the requirements from non-technical people. Yet maybe that I think that maybe will get better, but there's some really big limitations. And so I kind of agree with you, like 5 to 10 years things might change. I think you have a great point with putting like a domain knowledge paramount in your career. I think that's a really great idea. Even before AI, that was a good idea though. But still, yeah. So okay, fair enough. I still have a feeling like it might, like Kenji said, it might take our jobs, but it's just like flipping a coin, right?
Yeah, nobody knows.
Yeah.
I'm just going with the best knowledge I have at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess if it does take your job as a data analyst, what do you think you would do after that point?
Yeah, I had this existential moment back in 20, maybe it was 2023 when AI
Right.
was first coming out, and I was like, oh my gosh, everything I've built, my whole career, my YouTube stuff may go away in 6 months. Now it's been 2 years since then, and now I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm still totally fine. But I definitely had a moment where I was like, what would I do? And I really thought about it a lot. I was like what would I do if I lost everything right now? And I think I would do something local. My dad is a teacher at a school. My mom runs a daycare. I would find some trade to do. I really like building things. I like fixing things. I like teaching. So I would probably do something local, just like in my community. I wouldn't probably create anything else online if I like had to really hunker down and you know focus on something.
Okay, fair enough. And I guess what kind of hyper niche would you like drill down into with the healthcare data related stuff if AI were to force you to drill down into a hyper niche like you're kind of talking about?
Um, my expertise is in pharmaceuticals. So with the oncology and hematology, I work for in at AmerisourceBergen, now called Syncora, because they merged with another large company. Um, I worked with large pharmaceutical companies to test not test, but analyze the data for like a lot of double blind studies. So they would test a new version of a medicine or they would some new cancer treatment. And then we would, they have to test those things. They have to make sure it actually helps people. And so that was my specialty. So I would go back to that because I have a lot of experience in it. I know how the systems work. I understand the data. I know the testing. I know the doctors and everything, every step. So I would niche down back to that because I really did enjoy it. It as much as pharmaceutical companies get a hit for, how much profit they take, and I do hate that. The medicine itself really does help people, and it can like heal and transform people's lives. That's the part that I really loved. And so that's the my I'd go back to that niche in some way.
Okay, fair enough. And I guess you might not be able to answer this question depending on what paperwork you signed working with these companies, but I'm curious. Like, I've seen these YouTube videos, millions of views. It's like the experiment that went wrong, right? And someone like gets rushed out of the hospital during some blind experiment. Have you ever worked on data that you might have known was like some issue, that crazy thing happened?
No, we don't really see that.
Hmm.
There was a time though when I started like looking at this data, and at first you just look at it as like numbers. I just purely look at it as aggregations. I'm like, this many people had this reaction, this many people had this. And then I was like, that's a person. Like that's a human being out there who has this diagnosis and who's taking this medicine. And when I would see like I'm a very empathetic person. Like I'm like if I see a movie, someone's crying, I'll start tearing up. I'm a very empathetic person. And so I started really looking at this data from like these are real people on the other side of this data, who are really struggling with diagnosis and taking this medication to try and change their life. And I would get sad almost, like seeing when someone would die, or like even in the data. I think I'm too empathetic because again, that's why I got out of being a doctor, is because it was affecting me too much. But even in the data, I would see and I'm just like, oh, that's like really sad. That is somebody on the other side of the data. And so I found a much more human approach to data after a while, and try to take it a little bit more seriously than just looking at it as like uh, uh, zeros and ones, numbers and aggregations. And I think that just helped me do my job better. But I don't have any really crazy stories, like that from the data side.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. That sounds like way too much emotional whatever for me to take on.
I am
I
a
like
very
the
emotional.
zeros and ones.
Yeah, genuinely, I'm a pretty like as much as I like the data side, hiding behind a screen and whatnot. I am a very I would my wife can attest this. I'm a very emotional person. Like I very much connect with people, and I'm an introvert by nature, but I still really crave and need that connection, and I'm very empathic for sure.
Very cool. So I guess you haven't experienced any crazy things with that sort of data, but I'm sure you've had some big accidents that you've experienced throughout your data career. So maybe if you want to share maybe the biggest or the one that you can remember the best of something that went wrong and how you handled it.
Yeah, that's easy. I got many off the top of my head. I will say, making mistakes is totally fine, right? It happens to everybody. Making the mistake twice, I wouldn't recommend it. So the one that I remembered was early on in my career, and I think it was the maybe the funniest one was I was working with I was working in this small healthcare analytics company. My mentor, Tristan, at the time, loved Tristan. He's awesome. He was my boss, and we were getting up and running, and I'm like starting to take over projects, and everything's going awesome. And he basically was like, "Hey, Alex, I want you to take over this project." And I didn't ask any questions. I was just like, "Awesome." I was like, "I'm going to go do it." He just kind of high level kind of told me what he wanted. So being this like really like gung ho, just wanting to like prove my worth, show that I can do this, I just took the project and I spent like 4 days on it. Like 4 days of analysis and getting data from different places and doing a ton of stuff in Excel and setting everything up. I came and I was like, I'm done. He's like, awesome. He's like, why don't you hand that to the client? I was like, done. So I emailed it to the client. The client emails back and he's like, all of this looks completely wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is terrifying. Like, just, I remember the emotion of seeing that email and being like, Tristan, I don't know what I did, but like, you got to help me. So we started looking at the numbers. He's like, Alex, you were pulling the data from like 2 months ago. And I was like, oh no. I was like, how did this happen? It was such a simple mistake. Um, and this was a report that we have been doing for this client for years. So they knew exactly what the numbers should look like. They knew exactly what the numbers, approximations of what the numbers should have been. And my numbers were off. And I should have seen that. I should have known because I had been working on that specific report for them for several months, um, offhandedly. But then that was the first time I took it over completely. And I just totally butchered it. After that, I never made that mistake again. But I remember that drop in your gut where you're like, "Oh gosh, what have I done?"
Right.
Uh, that was that was one of my earliest big mistakes I made, and it was our
But
biggest client too. Like, I really wanted it to, I really wanted it to do a good job.
dang. Hopefully they weren't too upset about it, I guess. Usually it's
No,
more
they
in the
weren't.
gut, yeah, than
They
in the
weren't because
room.
they knew I was taking it over that month, and they were
Hmm.
just like, "Hey, Alex, like this isn't right. Why don't you take a look at it again?"
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Any other funny ones that you can think of?
I mean, they're definitely not
Maybe,
funny.
maybe you don't want to talk about them. It's too bad.
They're definitely not funny. I would say most of the other mistakes I made were they almost all of them stemmed from me not understanding the full scope of the project. Like I would go and I would work on something, and then they're like, "Oh, that's not actually what we wanted." I know we said XYZ, and but how do I say this? They were kind of just throwing it out there. They were just like, what if we did this? And I took it as, hey, let's go and do this.
Mm,
It's kind of like, again, it always comes back to confirming with the client, making sure you know what the client really wants, not just like their hopes and dreams and go try to build it for them because they may not use it or want it. But there are many times I would build things or do things just hastily instead of sitting back down with them. Again, most of those things were early on in my career. As I got farther along, I became a lot more confident in how things work and working with people. That was like my downside at the beginning. Where now I'm like, hey, are you sure? Like, I see the value in this. Just want to make sure you still think this is worth building. And then they're like, yep, let's build it. And I'm like, all right. And so I get sign off. I would get, approval from somebody else. It wasn't just me on a whim being like, all right, I'm gonna go build it.
mm,
So yeah, probably no other stories that are like I would say funny. That was, in my opinion, the funniest one. But
mm,
other ones are just mistakes,
mm.
just uh new to the world of data, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. I definitely have done plenty myself as well, of course, so it's all good. But and so you also worked as a manager for like a brief time. I've never been a manager, but throughout the years, I've been considering hiring people for some of the stuff that I do. I have a huge hesitation, which I think you do as well. So I guess how was your experience as a manager, and um, what's your hesitation with essentially being one in your small business today?
I'll preface this by saying this is my experience only. This is not going to be everyone's experience. I didn't like being a manager. And I advanced through my career very quickly. I think I'm very good at what I do. I make a lot of connections and I just got promoted fast. Um, I became a manager after about 5 years, 6 years. And I wasn't even a senior analyst. I just went from a regular data analyst straight to a manager managing a team of like 7 people. It was a big jump up. Um, I didn't the thing that I liked the least was mostly the paperwork. It was a lot of hiring and working with recruiting teams and working with budgets and um, I didn't get to do almost anything hands-on because I had a whole team, right? That's what a manager does. They just manage their team. So I didn't get to do anything. I didn't get to do much of being very hands-on, and I really learned about myself in that time that I am not a pure manager. I need to be hands-on, otherwise I get very bored and frustrated very quickly. Excuse me. So I think that my experience was that for the first 6 months it was awesome because I was taking on a project that they said couldn't be done and hadn't been done for the past 5 years. So it was a very lofty goal. We were trying to take basically all the data in our IT department, which is like 12 different teams, and get it into one place, which they've been trying to do, but they couldn't get a budget signed. They couldn't get general agreement from all the different teams on where to put it. I spent 6 months going to every team, getting every business requirement, looking at the budget, talking to vendors, and I got it done in like 6 months. And so I was like crazy proud of myself for that. And then I hired on data engineers and to migrate data and to start that work. And I loved it. I thought that was awesome. After that time, there started to be issues with, we had 3 contractors on the team from different countries. There started to be issues with turnover and paperwork and filling out this and that. It was a headache all the time. So then for the next 6 months after that, I was just like, I don't like this at all. Like I'm over it. Um, and so then I started like looking at other jobs, or then I even thought maybe I should just quit and do my consulting, which I had been doing for about a year at that time. Just do consulting full time. And so my wife was like, you don't want to be a manager again. Like just quit and do your consulting. And that's what I did. But that was my experience. I think if I had had more hands-on, I would have liked it a lot more. If there was less paperwork, I would have liked it a lot more. If I could go back, I wouldn't have become a manager. I would have stayed with my last team was basically like, hey, Alex, don't go. We don't want you to leave. Stay with us. We don't have an open role, but in like 2 or 3 months, we're gonna create a role just for you because we don't want you to leave. but it wasn't going to be, it was going to be like a project manager or product manager role, which wouldn't have been as high a pay, and it wasn't as prestigious. And so again, looking back, hindsight's 2020, I would not have taken the manager role. I would have probably stayed with my team because I really did like working with them. But you know, hindsight's 2020. I did the best with the information I had at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if you had never tried, you wouldn't have known that you didn't like it. And I think that knowledge is quite invaluable, especially when you take it to the consulting space, because you have probably, more hesitation about having other people do the work, which can come
Yeah.
with problems, we'll say. Um, and yeah, I guess, oh my gosh, what was I gonna say? It's okay. Um, As a hiring manager, this is what I was curious because I've heard this before. I've never been a like mid-level manager or high-level manager, but I've heard that sometimes it takes like 6 months, like you said, to literally gather requirements. I don't know. That sounds insane from my perspective. Why does it take 6 months? Like, are we working with legal stuff? Like, that sounds insane.
Um, so let me think. Let me walk you through the process, at least how it was at my company, which I've
Mm,
heard is pretty similar to a lot of other people's company.
okay.
Um, when if I was hiring on a full time versus a contractor, it's a different process. But let's say a lot of my hiring was contractor. I hired one person full time, but most of my hiring was through contractors. So we had a recruiting company. We used Accenture, but then we switched off of Accenture to some other recruiting company or consulting company.
Hmm.
And basically, what we would do is I would go to HR and I said, "Hey, HR, we worked in ServiceNow within my team as well as other things, but I needed a ServiceNow engineer, someone who could create all the automations and do all this, fancy stuff." So I was like, I need a ServiceNow engineer. Well, that's a niche thing, right? So I had to then go and look at the budgets of, other teams who had ServiceNow engineers and get the budget, and I get it approved by HR. Once I got it approved by HR, because I had my budget was like, I can't remember what my exact budget was. I think it was like 2 million for my team as well as software. So I had a
Hmm.
pretty decent sized budget for a 7-person team. Um, and so I would get that budget approved. I get it approved by my boss. So I get the budget approved. That took like a month.
Hmm.
Then I type up the job description. That took a couple days because
Hmm.
I have to go back and forth. And I would send it in, and they'd be like, "Oh, you can't write this. Need to write it like this." That would take a couple days. The longest part was actually the waiting. So we would hire Accenture. Accenture would go into their pool of talent and try to pick out the best people. And if they couldn't find someone in there, they'd go outside of their pool of talent. But inside, it would take them 3, 4 weeks to about another month to get the resumes of about 10 to 15 really good candidates. They'd send them to me. I would whittle it down to the top five. They would get those five in for an interview. The interviews took another 2, 3 weeks because people's schedules and all that stuff. Then I go last because I only did 2 rounds of interviews. I never did more. I hated interviewing people. More than two. I didn't mind the interview. I just didn't like doing it a lot. So
Right.
I do one last round and then I would do the job offer. All in total, the interviewing took probably another month. So for me, it usually took between 3 to 4 months, which is a long time. It's a long time to wait on paperwork and wait for signatures and wait for them to get you stuff. Um, what was nice is I didn't have to do it all myself, right? We had a company that helped us with that, but it just took a long time. And so, yeah, I would say on average it was like 3 to 4 months ish for the whole time frame.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense when you kind of go through all of it, but still it sounds kind of just insane if I was like a small business owner to pay someone on payroll for 6 months to, you're not doing nothing, but like the project isn't being worked on, like
Right.
so that's just crazy, but such is life, I guess. And
Yeah.
speaking of doing the interviews, you said you kind of hate doing meetings. So what do you do nowadays to minimize like the amount of meetings that you have to do for your work and things like that?
So consulting wise, it's just me. I don't have anybody on my team. I don't really plan on I could hire somebody, but I really think that it would let me rephrase this. I took on an intern for
Okay.
Analyst Builder, which is my ed tech platform.
Yep.
Intern was awesome. He was great, but even one meeting, 2 hours a week, one meeting a week was a lot. My schedule is very busy. Um, and so getting time out of my schedule to during work hours. When I'm off work, I'm spending time with my family. Like that's all I'm doing. But during work hours, I'm very, very busy. So even taking 2 hours where I'm taking time out of my schedule to do something, that's busy. So hiring someone on, that's going to be more than 2 hours a week. Like I just know it is. And so the time, would the money be worth it to hire somebody on to then mentor, get them up to speed? Do I just don't, in my opinion, it's not worth it. I don't really, it doesn't need to happen. For Analyst Builder, which is my ed tech platform, that
Hmm.
is a full-fledged company. That's like, that's not just me or YouTube, that's a company. So I have a whole team that I have. We have software engineers, graphic designers, data engineers, product managers. We have a whole team. I don't manage it. I pay my right hand man, my favorite guy in the universe, Kasoon. Kasoon, if you're listening to this, he's the best. I literally talk to him almost every day. I'm flying him out here. He lives in Sri Lanka. I'm flying him
Hmm.
out here. I flew him out here last year. I'm flying him out here this summer.
Hmm.
Um, he helps me run my entire business. I could not do it without him. I've told him that. I said you're irreplaceable. Never go anywhere. Never die. Um, he he helps me with everything. He manages the team. I pay for everything, but he manages the team, and um, I I don't have to do almost anything managerial on that side. I just pay him to do it, and it's well worth the money for sure.
And how do you feel about like working as a consultant nowadays? Now that you've left being a manager, you've left working a normal job, do you enjoy it more? Do you find it's more work hours? Do you find it's more of a headache, or how do you feel about it in general?
My experience of consulting is, I would say, very different than most people's because a lot of people ask me how to get into consulting. I'm like, well, I don't really know 100% because I started my YouTube channel, I grew it really large, and now people reach out to me, which is not typically how consulting goes. You usually have to pitch yourself, you have to make bids, you have to, work on small projects and then work those into larger projects. I don't have that experience. And so whenever someone asks me how to get into consulting, I'll tell them, here's how I did it. Here's how I've heard other people do it. And that's like most people, very, very different. But for me, I really love consulting because if I don't like a project, I just leave. I don't have it is my main money source um, because it's just me. I don't have any overhead. Like my company, Analyst Builder, makes more money net, but after paying my company and taxes and everything, I don't make as much. So consulting, I actually make the most money. But I get to, because I have so many requests, I can choose anything I want whenever it comes in, whether it's making internal videos for a company, whether it's helping with product market fit, whether it's helping with some type of tool selection, understanding they're like, hey, you have experience with these tools. We want to know which one's best for our use case. And then I come in and do like an evaluation. There's so many, and I get to do anything. And so I love the flexibility. I feel extremely blessed to be able to do what I do because if I don't like a project or if I think the team that I'm working with is, you know, not ethical in some way, I can just cut it off. And I consider myself a very ethical person. So like if they're doing something I don't agree with, I'll tell them. And if they want to keep doing it, I'm like, you guys do what you want. I'm out of this project and I'll just leave. And so it's kind of the ultimate, in my opinion, for me and myself, it is the ultimate job. Like I love it. It is works perfect for my lifestyle, and I get to make my own hours, and I prioritize my family above my work. And so when my kids get home from school at 3 o'clock, that's when I stop my work day, and then I work once they all go to bed at night. And I've been doing that for 5 years, and so it works out really well.
Okay. What kind of unethical things are you seeing? If you can talk about that, I'm curious. I mean, we're just working with data, right? Or or what?
Well,
Are they hiring
so
slave people to do data analytics?
No, how
Like,
do I say this? I definitely don't want to go too deep into that
okay,
side of
we can
things, but
skip it.
I've dropped several projects in the past, which is a handful of the ones I've taken on.
Hmm.
It's less than 2% probably, right?
No.
It's very few projects that happens with. But maybe it's price gouging. Maybe they're way overcharging for something that I know and I've seen
Like in
other companies
healthcare.
charge for, or they hide
Mm,
in sneaky things into their pricing structure. That's
mm,
always something that's like a big red flag to me. I'm like, you guys are not, that's not cool. Like you can't do that. And so
mm,
that stuff always rubs me the wrong way because I don't know. I don't, that's not something that I like and I've seen. Another thing is you know, how do I say this politically? There is a right way and a wrong way to talk to people on your team and to ask them to do things.
mm.
There's so you can do it the right way or you can do it the wrong way. And I've seen people do it the wrong way. And again, I'm like, I don't want to work with somebody who treats their employees a certain way. I don't like unethical, nasty behavior, is what I'll say. And I tell them that. I don't just ditch. I'm like, hey, listen, I didn't like how you did that. Here's why. I was like, and if that's a problem, I can't work with you. And so, I've had those conversations. I don't shy away from them. Um, and so, I've dropped a handful of clients over the years because of those things, and I have zero regrets.
Fair enough. There's like what's his name? I can't think of him, but he was like this famous he got famous for some medical like I guess scandal. He went to jail. He like recently came out. Maybe you know his name. He did something with like some kind of pharmaceutical. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Hmm.
You know?
The guy
No?
who jacked up the drug prices,
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember his name off the top of
like
my head.
Schruckle or something.
Yeah, yeah. Martin Shkreli, I think, right? Have you
It's
heard of
something
him?
like that. Yeah, it's something like that.
Do you have an opinion on his thing? Because you're talking about this kind of price
Oh, I think
gouging
it's
stuff.
I think it's completely unethical.
Mm,
It was like insulin. It's like the cost of like it was like or something super common drug, and he jacked up like 3,000%
mm,
because he wanted to make a more profit. I you know I run my own company, and I could charge a lot more for my services. Like I could, and I have a big audience, and I could charge a lot more. And I know other companies that do. But even when we add more things to the platform, new stuff, I have already told everyone I'm not increasing the prices. I was like, as a private company, I don't have any shareholders. It's me. I was like, and you guys trust me and you know me. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And I do the same thing with my consulting clients. I'm like, here's my price. I was like, I'm not gonna increase my price. This is my price for the project. Um, and I try to make it very reasonable. I don't. Uh, I need to make money for my family. But I am not in a position where I need to jack up prices and make a giant profit and retire next year. Like I love what I do. I want people to enjoy my work, and learn and do all these things. I don't like taking advantage of people. And so that kind of stuff has always rubbed me the wrong way. Just I don't fly in the unethical space.
fair enough. Speaking of contract prices, I'm curious. Well, actually, you have a different consulting, like how you got started. So maybe it's never happened to you, but Um, has a client ever ghosted you for payment? And what's like the largest amount of money, if you can share that, of course, of how much they ghosted you for payment? For me, it was like a little bit over 10,000. Never heard from him.
That's a
I got a
lot.
text, I got a text from their phone number and it was his wife saying, "Oh, he died." And I just looked at it and I was like, this is crazy. I was still pretty new, so I didn't know what to do. But do you have any similar story to that?
I do. I now have a lawyer on retainer.
Oh, okay.
It
Wow.
but it's not because I think I now like crazy need it. I
Yeah.
think it's more because I've had bad experiences. I have more legal stuff with my company and whatnot. But
Mm,
I did send a letter to somebody who it was like $10,000. Maybe it was about similar to you.
yeah.
$10,000. I did a big project. They just never talked to me. So I sent an email, and it was crazy. It was like the week after I sent that email, magically it appeared.
Ah,
And so, legal action, as much as I hate having to do that, like I did work. You owe me money. We signed a contract. And so, yeah, again, I don't like unethical behavior. If I have to send a whatever letter, I will. But I've never been a person like that's like my last resort. But that was the most. There was one very early on. It was like maybe $2,000. And I never did business. They came back to me later saying, "Hey, would you like to work with us again?" I said, "Hey, you guys never paid me from the last time." And they're like, "Oh, we're sorry about that." And then I never heard from them again. I was just like, I can't work with you guys. Other than that, though, I would say it was very rare or very small amounts, so it wasn't that big. It was just that
hmm.
one client, and I ended up getting paid from him. So, who knows what was going on behind the scenes, but I had emailed them for like 3 months, and I know they had my email.
Right, fair enough. I think I was so new I didn't even have any contracts. So I was just like, you know what? It's a drop in the bucket, I guess, in life and we'll just move on.
Yeah.
But maybe
Yeah. Oh,
eventually I
yeah.
should do that. Or what?
Contracts are contracts are very important.
Yeah.
I have some very long video on how I do my consulting business. I just detail it all. I talk about my pricing structure. I talk about how much I charge, etc. And one of the things I said, you need to have an LLC, you need to have contracts, everything needs to be in writing. I was like, if you don't, it was on a wing and a prayer, and you hope you get paid. I was like, the other is an enforceable thing by law. I was like, very different, very, very different.
So true. Um,
Yeah.
and and speaking of this about contracting, so when people say contracting, sometimes they just mean different things. So when you say it, do you mean, or sorry, consulting? I meant consulting. When you say it, are you mostly like 90% you're going in and saying, hey, team, you need X, Y, and Z technologies or people to get this job done? Or are you doing the implementation, which is what I would call it, is like the consulting is giving the scope, the implementation is doing it yourself. Are you doing both or just kind of the telling them what they need thing?
So I've been doing consulting for about 3 years. Earlier on, I was doing a lot of the implementation. So I was
Hmm.
coming in, actually doing the work, doing the coding, the pipelines, doing whatever I needed to do to get the work done.
Hmm.
Over the years, I've taken less of those on. I've just purposely chosen to not do as many of those because it's a lot more time consuming.
Yeah.
Um, I, I hate to say it in this way, but my time has become more valuable as I've gotten bigger as a creator. And so because of that, things that take a lot more time, I have to charge more for. And I don't like doing that as much. But what I really like doing is helping people solve problems. And so I do a lot more of I don't want to compare myself to like KPMG or some like consulting company, but they come
Mm.
in and typically they do a breakdown of different things and they help you choose different options.
Hmm.
I do that with my experience a lot is I'll come in, I'm saying, "Oh, you're thinking about getting a cloud platform." I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea for your thing. I think you would save a lot more money using this setup. And then they look at it and they're like, "Yeah, that really is everything we need." And that's like a tenth of the cost. And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." I'm like, "That's way cheaper." I was like, "Don't use AWS for this. That's way overkill."
Mm.
That's an example of like me coming in and just spending a week working with somebody, and I could save them over the course of a year like $1 million. It's high return, and I get to use a lot of my problem solving and previous experience and knowledge. And I also just know a lot of different products for different data stuff. I know a lot of ETL products that are really good and affordable, data migration tools, data storage and data hosting, and all these different things over the years that I've used or who are sponsors of my channel, who I'm like, wow, this is a great product. And so that's kind of like the knowledge that I come in with for those examples. Other times I get to like they'll hire me. They're like, "Hey, Alex, we love your channel. We're a data analyst company. We would like you to like create internal tutorials for our staff when they get onboarded." And I'm like, "That sounds great because I know how to make videos quick, and I know what you guys want. And those are fun for me to make. And so the variety that I get to do is pretty wild. Like every week, or every month, I would say it's something very different. Excuse me. So yeah, I forget the initial question, but that is that is I don't implementation. I do less implementation
Yeah.
now than I used to.
Okay. I'm kind of wondering for myself personally regarding this exact question because I do pretty much all the implementation myself with the initial consult, essentially, right? So I'm kind of curious because it sounded like initially you started out probably doing the same. How did you transition to just going in and giving advice and then leaving? Like, how do you, yeah.
Um, I don't know if my advice is good. I
Ah,
just
okay. It might just be you're famous on YouTube or something.
well, yeah, and I mean it is true.
Yeah.
What happens is like each week I usually get between like 7 to 10 people who want me to do something for them. Hey, you know, promote our product. We want you to come into our company and do a speaking engagement. We want to do so it's completely all over the place. I get to just choose. I know that I can, if I email them back saying, hey, this sounds like an interesting project. Is this more hands-on where you want me to implement? Or are you looking for someone to come in and, help
Mm,
guide you on what to do? And I just shoot a quick 30-second email. If they say implementation, I'm like, hey, I really appreciate that. I don't have the time right now. I was like, here's what I could do for you though.
hmm
And then, if that works out, it works out. So I just feel like it's a very different experience if I was on, a different side of things where I was having to go after customers. More, I would probably take, just projects that came along that I thought would pay well or with good companies. Now,
hmm
because I've been doing it for a while, most of my people that I work with the most for consulting are previous clients, ones that I've worked with in the past, who I'm on like a retainer for. I have a contract for a retainer. They pay me X amount per month. And basically, whenever they need me, they just hit me up and I come in and I do my stuff. But there are parameters. Like in the contract, I'm like, I'm not going to be the one to do the coding for this. Every contract is very different. Um, but I have a lot of parameters within those contracts to say, here's what I will do, here's what I won't do, depending on the client. And so,
Wow.
you know, I don't really know what I would do to transition from that. I think it just kind of naturally happened
hmm
um, over time out of necessity because I didn't have the time to do the implementation anymore. If I was doing consulting full time, I had nothing else. I probably would do more of the implementation because I like the coding stuff quite a bit. But I get to do a lot of coding in other places, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. And I guess do you have like a referral network for the projects that you can't take on where you can be like, hey, I don't have someone, or I'm not going to be able to build your data pipeline, but you can talk to this person to build the data pipeline. Do you have a referral network for that stuff?
So I don't.
Oh, okay.
And I did have one or two people back when I first started and I was doing it. The issue was is that most people who are reaching out to me want to work with me.
Ah,
They
okay.
already have
Right,
someone,
right.
right? They already had somebody on their team or who they knew who could do XYZ. They wanted me to come in to do a different part. And so
Mm,
if it wasn't me, almost 99% of the time they were like, hey, thanks for the referral, we actually just wanted you. And I was like,
mm,
I totally get that. And so it started, the people who I was referring them to, I would send them like several, but then almost zero of them would go through and they're like, hey man, like really appreciate you sending it, it's just not working. And I was like, I get it. So I don't
wow.
really do that anymore. It's also extra step for me, extra emails, extra work. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I stopped doing it because of those reasons, but I did try for like a year. It just never
Hmm.
really seemed to transition to someone else that easily.
That's really interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then the last question about consulting and contracting is, what's your opinion on Upwork and Fiverr? Because I get a lot of my business on Upwork. A lot of people tell me that's horrible. I hear that a lot. I get a little bit off, now branching out more, of course, but maybe what's your opinion on it from what
I
you've
think they're
seen?
great platforms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In fact, I met Kasoon on Upwork. He's my right-hand man. He's a very close friend of mine now, business partner. I had so the initial vision for Analyst Builder was an ed tech platform you could code and do courses. Someone had to build it out. So I started reaching out to people I knew who could build it, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to charge you like $125,000." And I was like, "Whoa, I don't have that much money." Um, and so then they were like, "Oh, well, I know someone else who could do it cheaper. Too expensive, too expensive. Referral, referral. Let me ask this person." Eventually, someone was like, "Hey, you should go post on Upwork."
Mm,
I also know a guy you should reach out to. But Kasoon ended up messaging me and he's like, I love this vision. He's like, I know how it could be built. Never done it before. He had never done it, but it's like, I have an idea of how it could be built. He's like, let's jump on a call. So I jump on a call with him. He designed on a sheet of paper the architecture for the platform. And I was like, this could work. I didn't at the time, this was over 2 years ago. I didn't at the time know as much system design, architecture, data engineering as I do now.
hmm.
Now I feel like I could be like a software engineer. I mean, I'm learning so much from him. Maybe not fully. I'll be like a junior software engineer.
Okay.
Um, but I met him through that, and we did like a trial run for like a couple months, and then after 6 months, it was like, all right, this is working. Let's sign a full-on contract, and now I have a full contract, a full team, a full everything. I rely on him a lot through that, and so I think Upwork and Fiverr can be a great place to get started, a great place to make connections with different companies that can turn into larger contracts or can turn into full-time jobs through that. You just have to put in the work, put in the bids, get good contracts and hope, that they like your work and do a really good job.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I can't argue with that opinion. I will say I still do hear a lot of negative things, even though I do it. Um, and it's funny you say the long term or the big contracts thing, because when I was really new, really new to the platform, I got one guy that hit me up who was like doing outsourced contracting, like a small contracting kind of thing, who he sent me with another contracting company, and they got me a contract with Microsoft. It was crazy. I think I was underqualified at that time, but
But that's how it works.
yeah, crazy.
Like as much as you laugh about it, I hear stories about that all the time. And
Okay.
in my world, that's how I that's how my business works. It's word of mouth or somebody knows somebody, and you don't think about it until it happens. But it happens exactly like that all the time. And I do that in my business, right? Somebody reaches out to me and I'm like, oh, I was like, reach out to this person because I know they'll help you.
Mhm.
Most people think it's just random. A lot of times it is that kind of connections thing, and it happens, and then you meet people, and they meet you introduce other people. That's like that is actually how real business is done. It really is.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so I want to ask about YouTube as well. So you
Cool.
started out essentially doing videos with the exact same format that you do today. But the YouTube
Yeah.
landscape has changed. I would say like it used to be like Jenna Marbles, and now it's like top 10 from 0 to 1 million in 10 seconds with no work kind of videos that are highly edited. So do you have any opinion about people that wanted to start YouTube channels, or someone like myself that's fairly new? What kind of format of videos, given the current landscape in nowadays?
Yeah, of course, if I started back in 2008, my channel would be massive, like 10 million.
Yeah.
If you started in, 2020, which is about when I started mine, you're gonna
Hmm.
have a good following. Like if you put in good effort and good content. If you start today, well, you're not gonna start out with as many, right? But in 5 years, you're gonna be like, I wish I started 5 years ago,
Mm.
right? That is how life works. I think YouTube, even for a personal branding, or if you're gonna start a small company or whatever it is, YouTube is still a fantastic place to go. There are many creators that I have started to recommend to people, like Mo Chen, Agatha.
Hmm.
Oh gosh, what's it called? I can't remember her exact channel name.
Okay.
But it's
I
like I
think I
think
know
it's like
Mo-Chen though.
Agatha. But Mo Chen, yeah, Mo Chen's great.
Hmm.
They make different content than I do. Everybody makes different stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and even Elijah Butler just started a YouTube channel. He's big on TikTok. He started a YouTube channel, and YouTube is something that you can grow over time. You don't have to spend your whole life doing it. Like me myself, I'm in a good groove right now. I'll tell you how I do it real quick, because you'll see how little time I do spend it on YouTube. Uh, I'm Analyst Builder and consulting take most of my time. I have maybe several days. I sometimes get a whole week where I just do YouTube content and I plan all my content out. And then for that week, I record. I record about 10 to 12 videos. Those 10 to 12 videos, I post one per week. That's like 4 months or 3 months of content at one per week. So in that one week, I make enough for 3 months of content, and then I don't record again or really do much for YouTube for 3 months. So I usually do about 3 or 4 times a year where I record a big stuff. Now it's a lot of preparation. I have to do a lot of the upfront work, but recording wise, like I don't do it every week. Most of my work is my actual business, consulting and my ed tech platform.
Mm,
So it's I do things very differently than a lot of creators who try to keep up with all the hype of things, who are constantly having to keep up with what AI model came out, what big news came out. Those are the channels actually. I know she wouldn't mind me saying this, but Tina Huang, who's another big YouTube
hmm
creator in the space, uh, we're good friends. I've met her many times. We chat quite a bit. She has told me on several occasions she regrets not making a channel like mine, which is
mm,
timeless content that can be watched, 5 years from now, or it can be watched today.
hmm
Hers is like content of the week or content that traditionally is like will only last for like 3 months, and after 3 months it's not going to be that relevant.
hmm
So she has to constantly be creating and keeping up with everything, and it's exhausting. I didn't do this intentionally, but over time I started to realize it and kind of focused on it. But I make content that can be viewed in 5 years or 10 years and should still be pretty relevant. There's very few videos that I have that won't fit that model anymore. And so I do more of the tutorial based things where I teach people skills and I teach people my thought processes and different technologies and tools. Whereas other people, some channels are like, you know, top 5 things to learn in February of 2025. And I'm like, well, after February of 2025, that's not going to be super useful. And so, I just kind of lucked into, but then eventually it became kind of a plan on my YouTube channel to, niche into some specific area that I think would last a lot longer. And it's obviously, it's really worked out for me. And so, um, yeah.
Okay, very cool. And would you, speaking of the technical kind of videos that you do on your channel that you talked about, would you recommend other YouTubers do that? Because you see a lot of videos that are tutorials that get like 90 views, right? Not like 900,000 views. So, do you have any opinion on that?
I think you create what you're passionate about,
Okay.
genuinely. And if you really like when I was making tutorials 5 years ago, I'm still making tutorials today.
hmm
So some of them I know are going to get almost no views, but I like it. I enjoy it. I really enjoy doing it. I'm trying to think of a. I don't want to go look it up, but
Ah, it's
I
okay.
just made a series. I made a series on. Oh, that's it. Shiny for Python, which is a
Ah, yeah.
composite. They make our studio.
hmm
I did a series for Shiny. I thought Shiny was awesome. It's such a cool tool. It's great for Python users to kind of fit into that posit ecosystem. So I made that video. Didn't get a ton of views, but I liked it and I enjoyed making it. And so if you enjoy making it, people will come. It may not be on that exact series, but if you make other stuff over time, people will come. So back when
Mm,
I first started 5 years ago, there were already tons of SQL tutorials out
yeah.
there, tons.
hmm
So why should I make one? I just thought I would make it in a different way. I thought the ones that were on there were kind of boring, a little bit robotic, not very enjoyable. So I was like, I'm gonna make it more fun. And so I did ones with like the Office characters or Parks and Rec characters, and I like added jokes and funny stuff in there. And that was kind of my differentiator that I did back in the day.
hmm
And people, I still get comments every day. I get like 150 plus comments every single day on my videos, maybe more than
hmm
that now. Maybe it's like up to like 200. I haven't checked the past couple months how many I'm getting, but they'll still say, I love this video. It's so funny. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's great. Like people like that. So if you want to teach it in a different way, do it. If you want to teach it in the same way, but you have a different personality, do it. Anything could be your differentiator. But if you're just starting out, don't expect a lot of views. That's just how things go. But be consistent and make content that you think well and that other people might find valuable. And that's really all I've done over the past 5 years. And people resonate with that. If it's valuable to them, they learn something, and you do it in a not a super boring way, people will like that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And then what about a content strategy for LinkedIn? I don't know if you have one particularly or just doing whatever.
My LinkedIn has gotten quite big. My strategy genuinely is just to post every day during the week. I don't
Hmm.
post on weekends. I just post during the week. I just post one
Oh, okay.
time every day. I usually do in the morning, first thing before I start my work day. But I post about anything I'm thinking. I also one post a week is a new video, right? So on every Tuesday, I know what my post is going to be. It's, hey guys, I released a new video this week. Here's what it's about. But everything else than that, it's things about running a business or how to get in the different AI stuff that's going on, how data analytics is changing, something funny in the workplace. This morning, I posted about um, I have a new tablet, the Samsung Galaxy S10. I just bought it as a gift to myself for hitting 1 million subscribers. That was what I decided to get. It has this thing where you can
Congrats.
create, yeah, thank you. You create a little sketch and you click a generate button and it creates into this artwork. And so I let my kids use it
Mm.
and they drew little monsters and little scenes and different stuff. And I was like, this is a great use case. I was like, this is really neat, really fun. And so that's what I posted about today. Nothing crazy serious. It'll get a couple hundred likes and I'll go on my way. But I don't op as I gotten bigger, I don't really do things to optimize for clicks and likes and everything anymore. I maybe I used to a little bit, not that much, but now I don't really care at all. I just post to post, and if people like it, great. If not, I don't worry about it. I just like, it's just a consistent thing I do. So, I keep kind of in this rhythm.
I think that's probably the best mindset to have because looking like constantly at your analytics, like how many likes did I get, every
Yeah,
10 minutes can be really, really bad. Um,
yeah.
and so speaking of the million subs on YouTube, obviously congrats. But
Thank
I
you.
did want to ask, now that you hit the milestone, are you gonna change up the channel in any way or just do the same thing forever, I guess?
Believe it or not, right now I don't have any plans to change anything. I have many series that I already have talked about and planned. Genuinely, the million after a certain number, it just becomes a number. I celebrated that day, and now it's like every other day. It doesn't really affect my life in any way.
Right.
I hate that this sounds really bad. And I'm not trying to say this in a mean way or a bad way, but 1 million subscribers, it really doesn't change my life that much. The YouTube channel, of course, has changed my life dramatically. But after like even 500,000, it wasn't, I see the numbers go up, and I'm just doing my thing. I don't really check the numbers anymore. I don't really look at it anymore. It doesn't really change my life on a day-to-day basis. Hitting
Hmm.
the milestone is fun, but I'm just going to keep doing my thing. Like I'm just making content that is useful. I have an R series, so our programming series, a
Hmm.
GitHub series, financial analytics, statistics series. Those are all coming up, and all of those are again timeless. They are all series that I was going to make whether I hit 1 million or not. It was just a special day, and now I'm moving on with my normal content. I do think in the future, maybe like in a year or two, I might add some data engineering content, because I myself have been getting into data engineering a lot.
That's
I
good.
like it. Yeah, it's great. It's
Yeah.
super fun. I feel like I'm a lot more knowledgeable on it now, so I can actually teach some things. But I did a little bit. I have a course on Analyst Builder for cloud platforms, and within those, I did some creating data pipelines and automations and stuff within AWS and Azure, and that's like a little taste of data engineering stuff. So I want to do more
Mhm.
of that because I think analytics engineering is becoming a bigger thing, and that hybrid role. And so I will in the future. but right now I'm just doing my thing. I'm just, creating my content and I'm that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm kind of like fitting that analytics engineer role right now myself.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of fun personally, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of the cloud platforms, between AWS, Azure, and GCP, do you have a preference to any of those?
Anything but Google Cloud Platform.
No way.
I I I really don't like it. And I've
Okay.
used it. I have hands-on experience with it. I've used it. I don't like it. I prefer genuinely if I had to choose just one, I would probably choose Azure. But I'm a Microsoft ecosystem kind of guy, so
Okay.
that's my bias.
Hmm.
But I've used even my business, Analyst Builder, we use AWS. We don't use Azure.
Oh, okay.
Purely from a use case perspective of what we were needing. We use a lot of Kubernetes
Hmm.
and oh now of course now I blank on it. I could tell you the whole infrastructure at another time, but I have videos on it.
Right.
But we have very specific needs for our company to run and process queries that people run on the platform real time. We hit off of AWS and Postgres systems, so we use Kubernetes and several other tools that
Hmm.
Azure didn't really have as good a setup for us. And it might have been a little cost a little more. So AWS was perfect. Um, and so depends again, it definitely depends on what you're trying to do. But in general, for most data analyst stuff, I prefer Azure.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. So do you have like a opinion on Azure Synapse Analytics and like Fabric then, since you're a big Azure person?
I've used both. I so Fabric has been getting hate online, and I get it.
I'm a
I
part of that, I'll be
understand it.
honest.
Yeah, I understand it. I
Yeah.
think I think the I actually think the biggest issue is optics. I think
Mhm.
that Microsoft created Fabric as this all-in-one, but it really isn't an all-in-one. And depending on what you're doing, it's overkill for what you're wanting. And the pricing
Yeah.
structures can be odd. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it I think Microsoft really just made it seem like it was this is all you're going to need. But then once teams got in there, they're like, wait a second, Fabric doesn't have everything we need. We also need this tool and this tool and this tool, which is going to cost us way more. So they kind of lure you in with this promise or guarantee that it's going to do everything that doesn't. Um, Synapse Analytics I've used, I really like it. It has I think it's good for simple automations and things like that. It depends. Again, I hate to say this because I say this with so often, but it really depends on what you're
Okay.
using it for.
Hmm.
And what happens is especially with my consulting, is I'll get into these tools and I'll see how they're using it. And I was like, why are you doing it this way? What if we just used this product? And they're like, well, we never thought of that. We were just trying to stay in our ecosystem. And I was like, but that when you limit yourself like that, you get stuck. And that's what happens with Fabric users is they get stuck with I have to use this ecosystem and figure it out in here. And if you just switch to this other product in combination with Fabric, then all your problems would be solved. But it's really hard when you kind of commit to this one ecosystem. It can be hard to get out of that mindset. And that's what gets a lot of people and a lot of companies in danger.
Fair enough. So are you like someone that prefers like a hosted Postgres or MySQL like instance instead of using a cloud data warehouse? Is that what you're leaning on, it sounds like?
It just
Or it just
depends. I
depends.
hate
Ah,
like
okay.
like I
Okay.
I I really am. I'm not a like I don't push any one thing. Even on my YouTube channel, I'm like, hey, listen, Python's great to know, but SQL might be better to use in this scenario. Or Python is great to know, but R might actually be better to use in this scenario. You know, if you only know one tool, you're gonna force it all into one tool. You're gonna try to, and it may not be built for that tool. And so early on in my career, I really only knew SQL, Excel, and like Tableau.
Mhm.
Then when I became like a manager, I knew SQL, Excel, Tableau, Python, R, AWS, Azure, and now that's like those are like the core things that I know. But now I know all these other tools that specialize in different things, and there's different ways to do things even outside of Excel. Um, and so now that the more I know, the more nuanced everything gets. that's usually, and that's like what to go back to consulting. That's why people pay me is, uh,
Depends on the
they are
situation.
expert. Yeah, they're experts in this area and they know it. They may even know it better than me. But then I get in here and I'm like, okay, why do you use that tool? Because it seems like it doesn't really fit in with what you're trying to do for your end goal. I was like, I know this other tool that can do this at half the cost and might actually work better. So then they get back to me like a week later and they're like, Alex, this tool's amazing. This has way more functionality, way more capability. It processes faster. This is exactly what we need. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. And so, you know, I don't really try to dig a hole in like, you have to use one or the other. I just go with the flow. It's like just a, I just know what I know. And when I get in there, I know. I usually know pretty quickly, like within a couple days of like working with them. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think that here's the issue. Have you thought about doing it this way? And maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But then I'm like, all right, let's dig into that a little more and whatnot. So I'm
Hmm.
not I used to be more of a tool guy, like, hey, use this tool. Now I'm more of like, let's look at the situation. Let's see what the end goal is. Let's see what we need to accomplish. Let's reverse engineer this back to what's the best tool for the job instead of let's use this tool to get the job done, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the best approach, of course. I will say though, my favorite cloud platform is GCP, so we're gonna have to we're gonna have to fight about that. I'm
I've
kidding.
just had such bad experiences with it.
Ah,
I, and that's again, that's 100% my opinion because
for,
I've met people just like you who are like, I
yeah.
love Google Cloud Platform, but for whatever use cases I've ever used it for, I've always not enjoyed it. I'm like, I want to go back to Azure or AWS almost every time.
Fair enough. And then what about Tableau, Power BI, and Looker Studio? Do you have any? You've never made videos about Looker Studio. You've made videos about the other two, though.
Yeah. I've used Looker. We used it in one of my previous jobs. It's
Okay.
good. I have no problems with it. I just I just prefer I like if I had to choose one to use in an actual job, it would be Power BI. If
Mm,
I had to choose one to learn, just like as a in general, learn how to use a data visualization tool, be Tableau. And then once you learn one of those, any other tool you use, you're
yeah.
going to be know 90% of it because they're all so similar now. Like
Yeah.
as they've progressed, they've all adapted and kind of changed to be pretty similar. And so there was I used it. We just started using a new tool at my company called Grafana.
Uh-huh.
We use it for a lot of stuff like logging data and creating
Mm,
dashboards, just simple stuff, whatever it is. And Grafana has some data visualization, and I've never used it before, but I got in there and I was like, oh, this is super simple because I know the core principles of data visualization. And even though it was slightly different, it took me like 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to understand how they did their data visualization. And so again, there's no one tool that's perfect. You just kind of go
right.
with and go with one that works for you at the time and learn as you go.
Okay, fair enough. What about with embedded analytics? Like recently, I've been kind of researching this. Basically, like someone has an app or a website, and then as a user, you log in and you can look at your own personal analytics, like YouTube Studio. And it's really interesting to me. I think there's probably a lot of opportunity in that space, especially with like the huge growth of SaaS products nowadays. So do you have any experience or any insight with embedded analytics by chance?
Yeah, we do that on Analyst Builder.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you go to Analyst Builder, you can go to your dashboard. You can see all your analytics. You can see all your stuff. And we'll be doing a lot more of that in the near
Hmm.
future. But that's like, a, I don't think we do it to as much as more other companies do.
Hmm.
But it's fantastic. Embedded analytics is and has always been a good thing. Giving users the ability to look and see and refresh and do time frames of their own data. It's fantastic. Um, that's more on the consumer side. On the business side, uh, I actually have had many issues with it. Some people will lump that into the same categories like self-service analytics, where if a company wants to do their own analytics, you'll set something up for them, then they can like look at it themselves.
Oh, right.
And I've had lots of run-ins with a lot of people, and we try to set it up and we try to do it. It turns into a spiral or a tornado of different requests and different issues, and this data isn't uploading and or refreshing, and oh, this
Mm.
data pipeline broke, we didn't know. It that spirals into a bigger issue. But on the consumer side, enabling a consumer to see that stuff is great, and it's a lot more simple than a business side of things.
Yeah, I would imagine on the business side, it's just like, oh, we need a new request that what you built doesn't have that functionality. So
Yeah.
it sounds kind of crazy. Um,
Yeah.
cool. And then I guess changing gears. So back to the mental health stuff. I'm curious, working with people in this situation, kind of a more deep topic. If you have like any opinions or strong opinions on the meaning of life, because I don't know, recently I've just been studying philosophy. Maybe it's kind of random. The meaning of life and suicidality and existentialism, like essentially existentialism, like searching for the meaning of life. So, do you have any like interesting experiences where you discovered things or opinions on this?
Well, I grew up in a Christian household.
Mm,
I grew up going to church. I would say in college, I kind of had this existential time where I was like, what is this all for? Like, why
mm,
am I here? And I definitely I talked earlier on how I got counseling back when I was in college. It was for some of those things. I was just like
mm,
what is life for? Why am I so depressed? Why is this so difficult to be happy? And now, ever after college, I met my wife. We've been married for almost 8 years now,
mm,
and it's almost hard to remember even feeling that way, because you know for me it's family connections. I go to church. I spend so much time with my parents. I value my family more than my work, more than just about anything. I've always seen, even before Christine and I got married, um, I very much was like, I want to have a family. That's like one of the most important things to me. And so now that we have this family, like I will take time off work any day to go to an event, to go to their school for a play. If they have some special thing going on, I will take time off. And so I think a lot of people struggle, especially in this age of social media, with feeling of emptiness, because it's a lot harder to make those personal connections. I think that especially in the mental health area, has led to a lot of depression, a lot of loneliness, a lot of sadness. I completely understand that. And so, I've mentored many people who were trying to become data analysts, and I ended up mentoring them like in the psychology as well. I'm like, it seems like you're really lonely. I was like, and it's really
uh,
tough to find motivation. It's really tough to find the willpower to get up and go and look for a job or do your job when you don't have anything behind you. I recommend, you know, going to church, go to gym, go to find a group that you like, to join a band. I was like, I don't know, but you need somebody. I was like, because sitting at home, being alone, just being on social media is not a fulfilling existence. And so, typically my advice for people who are doing that is just to connect with others. And you learn a lot about yourself when trying to connect with other people.
hmm. Okay. I like that response. I'm also a Christian, so I think you said you met your wife at a Christian singles event, something like that. So what do you think like is the best way to meet a potential spouse then?
Okay, so it's funny. My wife and I talk about this all the time. We have a lot of single friends, and um, you know, it is very hard to meet somebody. It's very,
Mm,
very difficult. And we were at a big church out in Dallas, and they had a singles ministry. That's literally what it was. And so the first time I went, so I met Christine. And we hit it off from there. We knew very early on we were going to get married. We got married that same year we met. Maybe it was like 8 months later, and haven't looked back. Um, but the biggest way to meet people is in person. I
Hmm.
I really don't recommend. I think that the rates will show you online dating really doesn't work that well. And so when you find something that you're passionate about, if you find whether it's kayaking, hiking, join a group who does that, and then find someone that you think's attractive, and then see if they have similar values, and then just go from there. But I don't really recommend online dating that much. It never worked for me. I know a lot of people who it was miserable for, and so that's
Hmm.
that's like offhanded random advice for the day.
Right. That's the fun of the podcast. So talk about things you
Yeah,
normally wouldn't.
yeah,
And what do you think about like managing your time between with your family and your work and your YouTube? Because me personally, like doing the contracting stuff, sometimes unfortunately I've done like all-nighters and it's pretty
yeah,
tough. So what's your like methodology to the madness?
yeah. I have a busy schedule. I got 3 kids. I got a wife. I have consulting, my ed tech business, YouTube, speaking engagements. I keep very busy. My schedule is quite busy. Um, I have over the years I now I've been doing this for 5 years now, so I got a very good rhythm. But even at the very beginning, I still do the same thing I do today, which is I always have prioritized my family time above any work. That's for me, that's like a core thing in our family. Um, and so if I have to wake up and work right away and work when they go to sleep, that's what I'll do. If I have to you know stay up extra late and get less sleep, I'll do it if I have to. But as the family time is definitely the most important. And so that's time wise, I just work whenever the kids are at school or when they were at daycare when they were young. I would just work, as fit in as much as I possibly could in that time. When they got home, I would stop working until they went to bed at around 8 and now 9 because they're getting older. 9 o'clock, and now from like 9 to 10, 11, whenever I decide to go to bed, I work. And so, and even on weekends, I work too. So I get, a solid 50 to 60 hours in a week, depending on, if the kids have a day off of school or, if there's some play or something I need to go to. But yeah, that's in, you know, in general, that's my work-life balance.
Hmm. Maybe this is too personal, but a follow-up question to that. You don't, if you don't want to answer, it's fine, but I'm curious, like, how do they feel, as you as a father or you as a husband, how do they feel about you working so much? Are they like, oh, I never get to see dad or whatever? Or,
I don't think they notice it at all.
ah,
In
okay.
fact, in fact, my kids almost never they even ask if I do work because they almost never see me
What?
working. Yeah,
Okay.
my goal because in the morning I wake up, this is my morning routine. So I get up, I go downstairs, I make their lunches,
Hmm.
I empty the dishwasher, I cook them breakfast, and then they leave. My wife drives them to work. And so that saves me a lot of time because I don't have to drive the kids to work. She picks them up, brings them home. That's a key part of my schedule. I can't do everything. But once
Right.
they leave, they never see me working. So once they leave, then I start work. And then my wife texts me, hey, I'm 5 minutes from home. I stop working. I go downstairs. I wait for them. The garage door opens. I help bring them in. We play, do any sports if they have any sports. Then when they go to bed, then I work again. I don't think they ever see me working, or it's very rare.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, it's almost like because I get to work at home, I'm so fortunate to be able to do that. Excuse me. I feel extremely blessed. I don't have a commute. I don't have typical hours that other people would work, like 5 o'clock, because they would get home at 3. I'd have to work till 5. They don't get to see me for 2 extra hours. I don't have that. So I'm extremely blessed that I get
Hmm.
to make my own schedule, take my own clients, and kind of spend as much. I try to maximize my time with the kids.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty incredible, honestly. Um, and are you teaching your kids anything about like coding or analytics?
No, no,
No?
not right
Oh,
now.
okay.
My oldest is not interested really in computers at all, and my youngest are too young to be using
Mm.
computers. And genuinely, we try to stay off technology a lot.
Mm.
Last night was a
Okay.
treat. We got to use, they call me daddy, so they got to use daddy's iPad or whatever to do the sketch to drawing thing, and they loved it. But that was like a real treat. Other than that, we don't spend much time on technology that much.
Mm. Okay. Fair enough. Very interesting. It sounds like you run a tight ship. No, I'm kidding.
We we try to. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
my wife and I put a lot of effort into parenting. It's definitely one of the
Hmm.
things that we um, really connect on and enjoy doing together.
Okay. Fair enough. And at the beginning of kind of when we started talking, you mentioned that maybe in a few years you might travel back to like China or Hong Kong or maybe other places as well. So I guess just maybe if you had any more ideas. I'm curious to hear about it because right now I'm a digital nomad. I'm in mainland Europe right now. I've lived in Texas before. So yeah, I've been to like maybe 20 countries or something like that doing the work. So yeah, do you have
That's
any
awesome.
plans
Yeah, I
or?
think I think we want to try out some. I mean, I think we'll go to Singapore to bring because that's she lived there for many years. So we'll go back there,
Mm-hmm.
see how it's changed over the years. We want to try maybe Thailand
Mm-hmm.
or Japan is also some different places we want to try out. Um, again, can't really do that right now because the little ones would never be able to make that flight. But that is definitely a goal of ours. You know, have it's kind of like a priority. We prioritize that over other things
Mm-hmm.
to travel and show the kids different cultures and give them different experiences and stuff like that. That's definitely a priority that we put in our family.
Yeah, that's cool. One guy I met who did way more traveling than I've done, he went to Singapore, I believe, or his girlfriend did. And he said that there's like a pre-Singapore and a post-Singapore you, because like you
Oh,
see
interesting.
how, you know what, you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because you know how amazing and wonderful it is. I haven't been there yet, but yeah, I think I want to go there as well to check it out.
Yeah,
Um,
I we also have just learned so much from other cultures about
mhm,
food and about,
mhm.
ways to live your life. And so we want to instill those same things that my wife and I got to learn growing up. We want to instill those same things in our kids. We want them to experience different cultures and different ways of life. And you can't really do that just staying in for us, the United States. You can't just stay in your bubble. And so right now we're going to travel inside the United States each summer. That's our goal. And then as they get older, hopefully do like maybe one international trip a year would be awesome if we could pull that off. But that's kind of like our goal.
Yeah, it's a good goal. Fair enough. And so maybe like a spicy question. You made a video about Trump tweets once,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you got any hate comments in there. Hopefully not. But I saw like your smirk. You're like, love him or hate him, and I just saw your smirk. I was like, okay. So my favorite Trump t tweet was like when he made that typo, and it became a viral meme. Like Kafifi. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah.
but I thought it was
Yeah, I
hilarious.
do
So
remember
do
that.
you have a favorite Trump tweet? Spicy question, I know, but
Do I have a favorite Trump tweet? I don't know. A lot of the stuff he says is pretty, wild. I think he's a very interesting person.
hmm
Um, I haven't run that script. I probably need to redo it because it Twitter's or X has changed a lot. But
hmm
I really like that video, and I think he's just a very interesting person. He just does his own thing, and like I've always said, you either love him or you hate him. But he is who he is, and I don't really have I can't really think of anything off the
Okay.
top of my head. He says whatever he wants.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. I don't even have
Yeah,
Twitter or I guess X or whatever, but I don't even have Twitter.
yeah,
But it was just such a big meme. I'm into memes, so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was funny.
yeah. And then what about gaming? So you got rid of gaming. I used to be a huge gamer, so I gotta ask, like, what's up with the gaming? Like, when are we hopping on the Fortnite squad? No, kidding.
So I never played Fortnite. That was after
Okay.
my gaming time. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
I mostly played on Xbox because I was never a PlayStation guy. I played Xbox. I played mostly Halo and Call of Duty, and I
hmm
was I was very good at Halo.
Mm.
my friend, actually, this is one of my crowning achievements. My friend and I, we had a group of four of us. When Halo 3 came out, we were one of the first 100 teams to beat the campaign on Legendary.
Okay,
Um,
nice.
not Bingo. What's
Bungie.
the company? Bungie. That I said I was thinking bingo.
Bingo.
Bungie sent us a plaque, and we
Oh
got to
wow.
keep it. I don't know where it is anymore, but
Okay. That's
yeah,
cool.
my friend Daniel, and then who was the other two? Uh,
Oh no.
Philip and Zach.
Okay.
This was like, this is like high school.
Hmm.
But then in Call of Duty, I love Call of Duty. And then
Yeah.
on PC, I played a lot of RuneScape and League of Legends.
Mm. Oh,
And
League.
so yeah, I was on a gaming team in college for League of Legends.
Oh wow. Did you
Yeah,
shower? No,
yeah.
I'm
So I
kidding.
was.
That's,
What's that?
did you shower? No, I'm kidding. It's a League
Oh,
joke,
I
you know.
very much did. Yeah, yeah. No, I wasn't crazy obsessed with it, but
Ah,
I
okay.
really enjoyed it.
Mm,
Um, and so I spent a lot of my free time gaming. And when I met my wife, I was like still a gamer, like I still gamed, but because I had so much free time, I didn't have kids or a wife or anything, so I had a lot of free
yeah.
time. But when I got my when we got married and I moved in with her because she was making a lot more money than I was at the time. So
Mm,
she had a nice apartment. I moved in with her, and um, once I realized, once I started realizing like I need to really push myself career wise and like provide because when it was just me, I didn't really care if I had a good job. It was just I was so low maintenance. Like any job paid for my bills. Like I had almost no bills to pay almost. Um, but I realized that gaming was definitely like an inhibitor of me working on myself to progress my career. At some point I realized that and I was like, I need to get rid of this. So I gave up Netflix and gaming and YouTube, watching YouTube at least for probably like 6 months. And after it, I never really went back. Now the only game
mm.
that I play is now I play Clash of Clans on
Okay.
my phone, and then like Brawl Stars.
Oh,
And I
okay.
really only play that like if I put the kids down for a nap on the weekend and they're asleep and I'm like chilling, I'm like, hey, that'd be nice to play a game or two or like check on my stuff. Or sometimes like early in the morning or late at night. But I
Mm,
try my best not to really look at it during the day because I know I'll get too into it or something. So I try
mm.
really not to play much during the day. And those are the only things I don't. Other than that, I don't play anything.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I also gave up video games for I think it was like 2 or 3 years actually. I just put my thing in storage or whatever or got rid of it. But I found that like people call me crazy for this, but I found that I enjoy like doing work, doing business more a lot of the times than playing video games. Play for 45 minutes, I'm like, oh, can I like do some work now? Like so I don't know if you feel the same way, but I guess, when you have kids, I don't have kids when you have kids, you gotta really focus probably. Uh,
Yeah.
so what about like your favorite what do you have a favorite watch brand? Because I saw you have like a collection or something.
I do have a collection. I tend to go for more, I don't say cheaper. I like high quality watches that are more affordable.
Okay.
I've never bought a luxury like I even thought about it when I hit 1 million. I was thinking about getting like a Rolex, like a cheaper Rolex, like 5 grand or something. But I was like,
Yep.
I couldn't bring myself to do it. That
Wow.
was I just could not. All my watches are under like 600 bucks.
Ah, okay.
And I like a lot that dive watch style with the silver bracelet. One of my favorite brands is Seiko. I love
Mm-hmm.
Seiko watches. They're just really good quality and really well made. And I like Orient.
Mm-hmm.
They Orient makes uh what's the
It's like minimalist style, kind of.
it is one of my favorite watches. Is I can't remember if it's called a Starfinder
Mm.
or maybe it's just an Orient Star. I can't remember the exact name off the top of my
Mm-hmm.
head. It's sitting over in my closet.
Okay.
But it's a very nice looking dress watch. But I think that was maybe my most expensive. I think it was like 500 bucks. But I almost couldn't bring myself to buy it for myself. It was almost too much. But I did, and now I don't regret it because I wear it quite a bit when I
Mm,
dress nice. But I really do like Seiko and Orient. I think they're very
mhm,
affordable, well-made watches. Um, and there's a lot. I mean, Casio is a great brand for different reasons. There's different brands for like different types of watches, but I don't wear a lot of Casio. I just have one G-Shock that I wear like when I'm going swimming or something like that. But so yeah, those are the ones I like the most.
mhm. Yeah, nice. Fair enough, fair enough. I used to be into watches. I don't know why, but like in recent years, I just kind of stopped wearing them out of like laziness, honestly, a little bit, because everything's like online, so you can't even see my arms.
Right.
But anyway, what about golfing? Like I've never golfed, but it sounds like you're kind of passionate about it, maybe a little bit.
I used to golf a lot. I loved golfing. I used to be on the teams. I was quite good at the
Oh,
many years
teams.
ago. But in recent years, I play maybe once a year.
Ah.
I did. It's not. Even my wife pushes me to golf a lot. She's like,
Mm,
"Go golfing, go golfing, go golf." I'm like, "Babe, I don't want to spend $100 to go out there and be really bad because I'm not good anymore." I still can hit like maybe I'll hit under 100. I used to hit like high 80s on a round, but
mm,
I can't do that anymore. I'm not good enough.
mhm,
And so I'm like, and I don't have. I'd rather just spend time with the family. Like I, because if I go out, then she has to watch the kids all day, and I'm like, it's not worth it. I'd rather just hang out with the
mhm,
kids and you guys, and so she does push me to go play, but I can't remember the last time I played.
mhm.
But I really did love golf. Still have my clubs in my garage.
Gotcha. And what about guitar? Kind of same thing. Like not enough time
Oh
to.
yeah, it's right behind me. I got this one.
Oh,
Um,
I
I have another one right over
didn't
there,
even
and I have
notice
two
it.
more in my closet.
Oh, nice.
But I love music. I've been playing since I was like 15. I'm self-taught, so I taught myself everything just through tutorials online and whatnot. And I play gigs with my father-in-law out in Dallas every so often. And so I went and played in October, November of last year with
Oh,
him,
cool.
and we played lots of gigs, and we'll go to guitar shows and stuff like that. So, yeah, I really love music, really like singing and songwriting, and I have a song on my YouTube channel that I wrote, so that's a fun one. And I think I'll make more just because I enjoy it and I want to do
I
it.
was gonna ask, yeah, because I saw it. I was like, this is pretty funny, like for what it's worth,
Yeah,
you know. Okay, so maybe we'll get another song. Got the
yeah,
sneak peek.
yeah.
Okay, and then last question, then we can wrap it up. The classic vegetable question. So,
Yeah.
what's your favorite vegetable?
My actual favorite vegetable that I'll eat, of
Mm.
course, is a potato in fry version. No,
French fries?
I actually really like vegetables a lot. It depends on how they're prepared. If I get a good asparagus, like that
Mm.
has like the garlic butter and some nice salt, like that's incredible.
Hmm.
But I like broccoli a lot. We eat a lot of peppers in my house for like in omelets and stuff. We'll do lots of peppers. I like cauliflower. We'll do cauliflower with some seasoning and put that in like a wrap and stuff like that. So I like some more the what do they call it? Cruciferous vegetables. They're like the really healthy vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and so. So I think those would probably be my favorite.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds good. Well, all right, Alex, I appreciate your time and coming on. And again, congrats with the 1 million, probably 10 million soon to come. Yeah. And I guess if you wanted to plug your website, you're welcome to.
Cool. Yeah, no, I really do appreciate it. Uh, that definitely was a shocker for me. I didn't think I'd ever hit that. But yeah, if you want to check out my YouTube channel, it's called Alex the Analyst. I have so much free stuff on there that I made over 5 years. I have 350 videos. There's a lot on there. And then if you want to take my courses or practice for technical interviews, I have a platform called analystbuilder.com. And we have over 100,000 users on there. And so it's a very big and growing platform. And it's kind of like a Leak Code and a Udemy put into one, but all taught by me. And so it's pretty cool.
All right, awesome. Cool. Well, that's pretty much it.